So today I'm going to be talking about my experience playing Shirahoshi for 2 Heroines Cups and for my final Red Bull event. So I ended up stumbling upon Shirahoshi because about 2 hours before my first Heroines Cup, I was playing on Ranked Sim. I was trying to make green-yellow law work with the new 8-cost law, and spoiler alert, it didn't really work, but in my last game, I paired into Kevin Zhao playing Shirahoshi, and he was able to just repeatedly clear my board, and he absolutely annihilated me. So I threw together the deck. My friend Ian had sent me a list, and I headed off to my first Heroines Cup with it, and the deck was surprisingly good, and I was like, okay, I'm pretty impressed by this. And then my other friend, Nobu, he also turned out to have just played Shirahoshi in his Heroines Cup, and he was also pretty hyped on it. So I started formulating the idea that I was going to play it for my Red Bull event on Sunday. And so that's what happened, and I'm going to get into a little bit about how I play the deck and how my event went as a result. Well, first and foremost, there's a few reasons why this deck went from being bottom of the every tier list to a functional meta deck. The big one is that it got a custom card. What I mean by custom card is if I was just to write a random card that I thought could turn Shirahoshi from terrible deck to a competitive deck, this would be it. So it's the 3-cost Shirahoshi, and basically for no Dawn to +1 Dawn, this card adds a life. This is because you frequently have a board of 3 to 4 Neptunians, so the 3 cost for the Shirahoshi is basically negated by the +1k that you give to your board of Neptunians, and then it has the effect to add a life. This just makes the deck so much more tanky. It messes with a lot of opponents' game plans where they just force you to 0 and hit you with an unblockable, and it helps with your aggression. Particularly in the Red Bull event, I was able to use this card to swing with something with a Red Bull Dawn, then play over it with this card, heal, and then use the Bird Neptunian to get the Red Bull Dawn back. So that's the big advantage that Shirahoshi had in Red Bull Dawn. In my Red Bull tournament, I played against a lot of yellow. People wanted to use the new cards, and I expected this, but generally yellow is a really good matchup for Shirahoshi because you're able to heal more efficiently than the other yellow decks with 3-cost Shirahoshi, while also using your significant board control to keep them from applying much pressure to you until you are able to have a board of really big guys that they can't handle. This is how I won both round 1 and round 2 against respectively yellow Enel and then yellow Luffy. Round 3 I played against Ace. Ace is a deck that you want to be splitting your time between attacking their face and clearing their board. A lot of their bodies are pretty easily removed with the Scaled Neptunian because they're not going to be wanting to give you those 2 cards when you still have a bunch of other 6 to 8k swings that would then go at their face. And because they're consistently going to be losing their board to this conundrum, it makes it really hard for them to put on enough pressure to close out the game as you continually heal with 3-cost Shirahoshi. My game came down to the fact that he had to take both of his last 2 lives in order to play around me KOing a Newgate with 9-cost Shanks if he were to free block. So I knew that I just had to put him to 0 here and then hold up enough counter for a Roger play. And that's exactly what happened. I had exactly enough if he dropped Roger to counter out of a 6k and a 12k. Then round 4 I played against Red-Green Luffy. Red-Green Luffy is a pretty good matchup for this deck, both because Know Your Strength is really strong, and because you're able to clear their board very effectively, even while they have the defensive ability of all their Dawn. This is once again largely due to Scaled Neptunian being able to poke for extra numbers, and Hody being able to rest their characters and their Dawn. Then round 5 I played against Foxy. Foxy is not really able to do anything to Shirahoshi. Their entire gimmick of locking the leader sideways will never go off because Shirahoshi can't even be turned sideways. And then you're just able to clear everything they play, and it was really not a good matchup for him at all. Then round 6, I played against the deck that knocked me out of both of my other top cuts, which was Purple Yellow Rosinante. He went first. He played the 2 searchers into the 4-cost Promo Law, into 6-cost Rosinante, into 8-cost Law with 7-cost Law. I did not really have any 2Ks, and he just kind of ran me over with that. Oftentimes when testing Rosinante, I felt like it was a good matchup where I could find control, but this game was really my most bricked game, and he just ran me over. Then in top 8, I played against Boa. Boa's a matchup that I had tested a lot in the Heroines Cups, and really the way that I play is I establish 2 bodies on my 5-Dawn turn and 2 bodies on my 7-Dawn turn, and then I don't swing with them, and then on my 9-Dawn turn I turn everything sideways, and then I usually win within 2 to 3 turns from this. And it's really hard for them to combat this, and they're not able to put enough pressure on you between all of your events and the 3-cost Shirahoshi. Then in top 4, I played against Red Green Luffy, and it went very similarly to the one in Swiss. Then in top 2, I got paired against my friend Zaya, and we left and went and got dinner. The deck works really well for Heroines Cups as well. I won my first 2 Heroines Cups. Against green decks, this deck is incredibly favored because you're just so efficient at clearing their board every single turn, and green can't win without a board. In the initial turns, you're not really going to be able to do much because without a leader that can swing, you're locked into a limited number of plays. So generally this means that you're just going to be playing Shirahoshi Searcher and Event Searcher to try and find your pieces, while also trying to establish 2-cost Shirahoshi because that's the main way that you're going to protect your board, both from swings with the 2k buff and from effects with its other effect. Then you establish some Neptunians. If you're going first, the primary goal here is to be able to establish a bird Neptunian, then use its effect in order to establish a top knot Neptunian. But there are other combinations you can do using the spotted Neptunian. Oftentimes, even if you just have a spotted Neptunian, you still have a pretty good start because that spotted Neptunian will find you a 5-cost, so you're still at establishing 2 relevant swinging bodies. On 4-Dawn, I try and see what I can combo with a leader effect into a spotted Neptunian. Oftentimes this will be a 2-cost or a 3-cost Shirahoshi. So those are mainly the scripted part of the deck. From that point on, you kind of just have to make decisions based on what goals you're trying to accomplish. But very aggressive play that you can then do on your 7-Dawn turn if you have already established the bird Neptunian is to play Hody. So you're taking your life, so clearly very aggressive, but then you're able to use the bird Neptunian plus the leader effect to also establish a scaled Neptunian, so you really can take control of the board here. I did this in all of my games that I played against Red Green Luffy. I played against Red Green Luffy once in Swiss and once in top 4, but generally, as long as you're playing a scaled Neptunian on 7, you're doing it correctly. There's lots of different things that you can combo based on what you need and what the board state looks like. You can even just play another spotted Neptunian here, but generally you're getting to 4 to 5 characters on board. From here, you just have to judge what your best defensive practices are for each matchup. Something that you can do that's really strong is that you have an 8k restanding blocker if you have 2-cost Shirahoshi and you have top knot Neptunian on the board. Generally, I want my board to be a 2-cost Shirahoshi, a bird Neptunian, a top knot Neptunian, and then the other 2 cards don't really matter so much. but oftentimes there'll be something like a Hody and a Scaled Neptunian. I think that getting out Shirahoshi 2 cost and leaving it out is pretty important. It means that your opponent is never really going to be able to regain control of the board. And when you're threatening 8k swings every single turn, it's really difficult for them to keep a board, especially as you're continually resting things with both the Bird Neptunian and the Hody Jones. This board of really big guys and efficient resting of blockers is really threatening for opponents, and the deck has sort of an absurd consistency because the Scaled Neptunian is able to cycle so many cards. Frequently, I'll be playing Scaled Neptunian every single turn past my 7 Dawn turn, and because of this, it makes Shirahoshi somewhat of a difficult deck to play because you really have to be planning turns in advance in order to do such large cycles. Frequently with the card, I'm doing draw 3, trash 3, or draw 4, trash 4. Sometimes in matchups where I don't feel like the 2-cost Shirahoshi is very necessary, you're even getting as far as draw 5, trash 5, which really takes a lot of planning for the future, but I'm almost never discarding a 3-cost Shirahoshi off that effect, and I try to make my hand into largely my plays for the next turn, so that's going to be another big body like a Scaled Neptunian, because eventually you're not going to be able to play that many bodies every turn. So it's more going to be about splitting Dawn amongst your already established board. So I'm going to want to have a Scaled Neptunian so that when I use 3-cost Shirahoshi over one of my other bodies, I then am able to replace it with a solid attacker. So I'm generally filtering my hand down to Scaled Neptunians for the next turns, 3-cost Shirahoshi, and a bunch of events. A really good play to postpone the game is to use the Know Your Strength event and then use 3-cost Shirahoshi, and it can make it really difficult for your opponent to close out the game. This deck fares well even with unsearchable cards like Know Your Strength because you're doing such an intense filtering. If you're doing a draw 5, trash 5, that's equivalent to looking at 5 cards off the top of your deck for any sort of searcher. So my 3 unsearchable cards are Know Your Strength, Hody Jones, and then 9-cost Shanks. 9-cost Shanks is a really good card to just solidify your tempo advantage or to gain more advantage by establishing an even bigger body that can help to close out the game. Against Ace, sometimes you can even bait them to rest their Newgate and then punish them with a 9-cost Shanks, and the game is almost irrecoverable for them at that point. But primarily the Shanks is necessary for the Mihawk matchup. When they play a Shanks on 8, you can then kill it with your Shanks on 9. Whenever Megalo isn't going to be enough to KO something, using a Shanks can be a really efficient method, though generally the way that I found myself clearing larger bodies was by just using leader effect to play Scaled Neptunian and then attaching most of my Dawn in order to clear something or get a bunch of counter. Having a 1-8 with Character Rush is extremely powerful, especially when it's cycling so many cards.